I've learned a lot about poverty over the last 3 or 4 years, and I would say I'm one of the people who lived in a bubble. When I first became city manager, this was not on my top 3 or top 5 list of things. I knew we had poverty in Springfield because every community has poverty to some level. Poverty was slowly growing in Springfield, just like it is in a lot of communities. And so when it changes 1 or 2 percentage points a year, you think, oh gosh, that's bad, but you never really pay attention to it until after you look at a 10-year or a 15-year trend and you see, wow, it's significantly changed. There was one thing I would advise every citizen to do. It's to go through the poverty simulation. It takes 2 hours to go through it, but it changes the lens that you look at everything. Essentially, 1 in 4 people live below the poverty line. And that surprises a lot of people because, quite honestly, if you live in a section of town where there's not a lot of poverty, you don't drive through those areas of town, you don't see them. It's prevalent, but it's more prevalent in certain areas. In our city, it's the northwest part of town. And when you start to study cities, what you learn is that most cities have something like that. They have we call it our northwest quadrant, but they have a section of town where it has more poverty than others. So there's this issue of the balance of the haves and the have-nots, just like there are in any other community. And so the first thing that we did as we prepared for the community listen, where we went into those neighborhoods and we did the most dangerous thing a government can do. We had open mic night, and we handed over the microphone to people and said, you tell us what you'd like to see us work on.
There's a disconnect between the city and the people who live in the north side because they've been ignored monetarily for decades here. You have to get the people who live there involved, and you have to start educating their kids to say, it doesn't have to be this way. It can be better. Here's how we can work together. Here's how we can create community. The north side's been ignored since 1887 when the city merged. We have rising poverty. It's 27% here. So all your planning led up to this bad situation. How is good enough fixing that? Now I can go to their meetings and use their own information and beat them up with it. Then they're like, wow, now we have to start actually producing something because somebody who knows is watching us. When they learn, oh, you're a planner, oh, we did blah, 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 blah. And so I fit right in. But the thing is, what I ran up against here, now there's an education process that's totally missing. People don't understand all the things I just told you. And they think, oh, this is just how it is. And I'll tell you, one of the worst things about spending 20 years in the Army is showing up somewhere. I say, gee, how come all your things are upside down? Oh, that's just the way we always did it. I'm like, well, how come? We just do it that way, and that's the way it's going to be. That's never good enough for me. I'm like, no, that's how it goes. And I don't care what position you're in, how high up or low down you are, you got to tell people, that's not right. Explain this, here's how it works, and then they're like, oh, I never thought of that. So the status quo is never good enough. The city's comprehensive plan expires in 2 years. It takes 5 years to make a comprehensive plan. They're not even doing that. So there's going to be an overlap of 3 years, and they've been resting on their laurels for 15 years since the last plan, which was started in 95. Here it is, 2017. That's 22 years, right?
So we had to try something a little more methodical, a little more radical, and so we created the Zone Blitz. And the Zone Blitz takes one quadrant of our community where poverty is most prevalent, and it says for the next 18 months, we're going to address poverty in 13 different categories. We went into those communities and asked them, what would you most like to change about your own community?
We have shitholes of poverty. Who wants to live there? The people who live there move around. They don't even want to live in the place that they're at.
We wrote everything down, categorized it. So for the last 18 months, we've been focused on trying to move the needle on poverty in 13 different ways. That will end, that 18-month time period will end in a couple months, and we'll evaluate how well we did. Did we move the needle on poverty in one zone? And if we did, we can replicate that in other places within our community. Very unusual for a city to take the leadership in leadership role in something like this. I'm a big believer that education is the way out of poverty. So we have to do a better job, I think, of making sure that we have open access, public education. And I'm not sure you ever solve poverty in the first place, but if you're going to move the needle, we knew we had to do it with partners. And so you see projects like the Northwest Project that Amy Blancett's doing over at the Fairbanks. And those are families that they've got skin in the game. They are committing their time and their efforts to pull themselves out of poverty. So it can be done. It takes a lot of work, and you have to be dedicated to doing it. The systems are set up so that it's very difficult to pull yourself out of poverty. It's one of the lessons learned out of the poverty simulation is that a person who does not live in poverty does not truly understand all the barriers that somebody living in poverty has every day.